Hello, everyone. Welcome to Homemakers Radio and welcome to the Manse. We are having company right now, and I'm sneaking away for a few moments to talk to you. I just don't feel like myself until I have come and talked to my ladies. I'm so grateful that you come and tune in and listen to me when there's so much to do and there's so many more exciting things to listen to, so you can have something to walk with or work with, some kind of company. I know when my children were home, I liked to talk to them as I went about my business at home. Sometimes there are some tedious things to do or repetitive things, and there can be a feeling of isolation at home. And so having someone to listen to or someone to talk to is always nice, isn't it? And I remember thinking how I would have loved to have had something to listen to while I worked, and we used to just sing together if our brothers and sisters were there, and that was very helpful. Always helped a long chore become shorter. And so now I'd like you to go along with me today, and if you were following me from the time you got up till later on in the day, this is probably how we would do it. You get up, and I have a tea station in one of my rooms, and I'll just get up and have a quiet cup of tea to start my day with, and then sit down with my little notebook and write my list. And when I say tea, ladies, I'm not talking about necessarily black tea, Ceylon tea, or something you don't like, because sometimes I'll just put hot water in here with a wedge of lemon or lime or a strawberry or some blueberries, because the scent and the whole ceremony is so delightful. And this is my cup that I'm using today. And so if you're a young person, you don't know about teas, and you get invited to one, don't panic and say, I don't like tea, because you're turning down a whole lot of other things when you turn down having tea with someone. It's not just about that tea, and you can always let them fill your cup and just leave it alone. Don't bring attention to yourself. You don't have to drink it. You can always bring your own bottled drink too, and or you could bring your own tea bag or something that you like better. So don't be quick to turn it down, because it's wonderful, good, clean fellowship usually. And if the hostess is very adept at guiding the conversation so that it doesn't deteriorate into something unpleasant, that is good too. So let's get you started. Get yourself a hot drink. Now, the reason I say tea, some kind of tea or tisane or herbal, is because anything hot, I have read on several sources and some of the books that I have, that when you have a hot drink, it flushes viruses out of your body. It helps. And I will tell you something. When everyone was getting sick these last 2 years, I didn't. And so I attribute it to possibly the amount of, getting up in the morning and having that first cup of tea. And it gives you a chance to settle your brain to settle down and to think. And so sometimes we ladies at home can feel rather isolated, and so that's why it's good to have someone to talk to, someone to listen to. I know friends who get on their phone and will listen to each other while they work, and tell each other what they've got done while they listened. And so I also would like to tell you that it's really important to get dressed into something that cheers you up and that makes you happy. The dress I'm wearing today, I'm not going to show it off, but I will show you something of it. I made it about 30 years ago with some fabric I got at Walmart, and I noticed something about the fabrics that had a little bit of glitter in them. They washed and wore longer and did not get real thin. They had a coating on it, even though they were 100% cotton. And so I still have this. It's my butterfly dress, and I made it from this pattern. I'll try to remember to post that for you on the blog. And I have kept it all these years, even though it's not in style. But I'm not so sure it's the style as much as it is the fabrics that make clothing exciting. And one thing I like about the full dress is that it's just easy to take care of. You don't have to have a bunch of pieces, a top and a skirt and a top and everything else, and then a sweater over that. It's just one piece. It's a one-piece garment, and that's what I like about it. And so I'm going to try to show it to you today. It's getting a little tattered, but I decided to wear it today because I liked the colors. So there it is. And I'm not sure I can get back far enough to show you how long it is. And one day we will have a stream where I can talk to you while I go on my walk. But before I can do that, I would like for you to go on a little walk, do a few stretches and stretching exercises. I wanted to tell you about an interesting phenomena regarding your health and your appearances, that some of us in the Northern Hemisphere are experiencing the great amount of pollen, especially those of us out in the country or in farming areas, grass seed and pollen. And don't run to your doctor if you think you're getting some kind of strange disease, because I was reading a lot about the effects of pollen on some people's health, and it can actually make you forgetful. It can also maybe you want to just research this and look it up, and the effects of pollen on people's health, and not just your mind, but also on your body, your throat, and everything like that. And there are a number of good teas that you can drink that help alleviate that. And so you want to research that all yourself. Always research your own health, because you know more about your body than anybody else. You know where it's been, and you know what's in it. You know what you just drank. So I want to make sure that you feel that your appearance is satisfying to you. And I don't care. I'm not particular about what people do, whether they wear makeup or not. I'm not so much as I used to, and mainly because of the time that it takes. And so I'm a little bit red most of the time. I'm not covering all the redness anymore. But it's whatever you feel happy and comfortable with in your home. Whatever makes you smile, whatever makes you happy. So if you do fix yourself up a little bit more, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's helpful. Whatever you think will glorify God and reflect the beauty of His creation. So now I'd like to move on to the home. And I usually have this in 3 parts, and that's your preparation, which means getting ready for the day, and then the home, various aspects of the home. Nothing too spectacular. I didn't discover anything extraordinary, but it's always nice to listen to. And we have a ladies' Bible class every Thursday. My mother-in-law had it. She must have had it 30 years, because it's over 50 years going, even though it's not the same people. After she passed away, before she passed away, she asked me to take it, and some of the ladies that were still here that knew her still wanted to continue it, so it's been continuing. And I like to homeschool them before we start our, Bible reading, and make it interesting. So I decided to do the herbs of the Bible. And so last time, one of the ladies invited us to her house. That's very rare for anyone to do that. And she invited us to her house, and I had given her some older tea time magazines, and she'd found something she wanted to try, and she had laid the most beautiful table. And I will try to include a picture on the page on which I've embedded this video to see how beautiful it was for her first time. And she was pretty nervous, but she did a wonderful job, and had a fabulous home, and acres of beautiful landscaping, and a beautiful house with guest room and everything. It was just lovely. And while I was sitting there, I kept thinking, why in the world do you want to come down to the manse every week when you can be here? Because she had the most gorgeous house and furnishings and beautiful view. And so I decided to do the herbs of the Bible. And that day that we were up there, I read about something called cumin that was one of the offerings of the Old Testament. and and what it was used for. So since one of our local grocery stores had it for 99 cents, I bought them each one, and they had not formerly used it. And she called me later on and said she had tried it in one of the cooked dishes they'd made, and it was just delicious. So I wanted to read to you what I read to them. First of all, we found a scripture in the Bible where cumin was mentioned as one of the valuable spices that was used in the offerings. And then I had made a list in my little book of all the things that it was good for, and I thought I would read that to you as part of the homemaking section and see if you would like to just investigate this a little. Never take anything I say without checking it, looking it up. We're not all the same, and we might not all believe the same, but we could still be friends. And that's one thing that my vital friends and I, we laugh every time we say that. It means I know you hate me to death because I don't agree with you, but we can still be friends. And of course, we know that's impossible, but we say that just to cover up the fact that no one believes that. We don't believe the same thing, but we can still be friends. But we can still be friends, and you might not totally be on board with some of this, but this was just something of interest that I had shared before and got good response to it. And so it's good for the skin, apparently, and that's what I found out on several health and herbal sites that I had read. And and it's also good for treating thrush. I can't tell you how you would take it, except maybe in food. I like it in cooked food. And it's good for headaches. It's also good for nasal congestion and digestive problems, fatigue, and dispiritedness. Now, I had to look that up in the old dictionary, the 1828 dictionary. Dispiritedness, it means to deprive someone of courage, or to be deprived of courage, or to be depressed. So that's interesting, isn't it? Maybe the source of a lot of our down spirits and low spirits could be the lack of these nutrients and these wonderful herbs and spices that we have now available to us. But I can remember when you couldn't get this in this part of the country back in the day. And so today, I wanted to talk about how flavorful it is for foods, and that was one of the main things that I learned about it, was how flavorful it was. So now, after you have used that, then you might want to put on something on these little tiny slow cookers. Are very nice because they cook very fast, a lot faster than the big ones. I always like to put something in one when I get up in the morning, so that if anyone needs a hot soup or something warm during the day, they can snack on good food. And it also makes the house smell quite nice. And then I will go back to the day before there were all the fancy papers and things that you could get for scrapbooking and for crafting and for card making, when women used to take some time out after they had done a load of laundry and hung them outside. And by the way, our washers weren't in the house, they were on the porch, and our mothers would plug them in, and so that they would swish, and then we would run the washed clothes through the wringer, and the clothes would fall into a rinse tub on the other side of the wringer. And I thought that was interesting. We don't have to listen to it in the house. It was always on the porch. And so then after they had hung them on the line, they maybe come in and sit down and work a little bit in their homemade scrapbook, and they would cut things out of anything they had, whether it was something they liked from a catalog, a recipe from a newspaper, and our local newspapers always had good recipes, or anything that they liked. Sometimes you could get things in the mail that had little scriptures on them or saying, and they would just glue them in a book. And I always wondered what the point was watching all this, but it really was a very good pastime, and it had meaning to them. And I think I might still have one of those scrapbooks of my mother-in-law, where she had was kind of a journal she kept, but also she glued things in it. And so it might be time to sit down and sort through some things. And they always had clippings that they would sit by the side of a chair in a little container and reach over and put something in their little book. And you might think, oh, that's just so small-minded. I couldn't even think of anything less intelligent to do than that. But when you look at it, the praises of men, the awards you get of society, and the admiration you get, and even the degrees you get, you can't give them away again. You can't hand them down to your loved ones, and no one can inherit them. But if you make a book like this, you can give it away. Someone can inherit it. You can actually read it, look at it, and touch it. So it's really a tangible thing that's, to me, very worthwhile. And it can be passed on. And you can see it. And it gave women a great sense of satisfaction to do things like that. And I've heard over the years, as times got more enlightened by people that thought women were doing mindless things, they'd say terrible things about stuff like that, saying, well, I learned how to cut and paste in kindergarten. And they rejected that. But those were done with great thought and meaning. And as a matter of fact, when my first child was little, one of the grandmothers gave him an album full of the things that she had collected from old greeting cards. Like, she would get birthday cards and she would get pretty cards. Well, after a while you can get so many. Well, she would cut out a bouquet from one or a picture from one and put that in this album, along with one of those little card scriptures that people would give her, and made him a beautiful album. She went to a lot of trouble to do that. So these are the things that we wish we had more of. We wish we could go back and look, don't we, at what they did and what they liked and what their preferences were. And those are the things that we can see and we can touch. They might have gone way up in their business at work, but we don't benefit from that as much as we do their things at home. So this is what we're leaving for our loved ones too. And so I also would like to encourage you to remember in the beginning to get while you're having your first cup of hot tea, to get your little book out and write down something of a schedule, something of things that you would want to do. Now, I find it valuable. Maybe you don't, and you would think at my vital era that I wouldn't have to do that anymore. It would automatically be in my head, and it is. But something nice about writing it down and putting a little check, it just makes me feel good. So if I have a little list of things that I want to get done, and even if it's the same thing every day, I feel so accomplished and I feel less uncertain about what's going to happen to me. Because if you don't have some kind of plan, the world and other people can take you on a long ride that has no sense to it, and all their problems and all their disorganization can kind of come into your life. Now, I'd like to also read to you a little bit. When we went up there to this lady's fine house, our subject was, we're just reading along in the Bible. We just read a few verses and we'll stop and everyone gets a chance to discuss that verse. And I try to make them realize that please limit it to what this verse said and what you find in it. And don't go off on a tangent talking about your mother's friend's sister and some kind of predicament she got into. We want to stick to the Bible so that we can really build one another up and edify one another up with it. So this is what I'll do with you too, but I'll tell you what we read. And this will help a lot of you who are perhaps going through some little glitches in life where maybe some of you have deep concern for one of your grown children or your husband or somebody who's just lost the plot, as they say. So I wanted to bring that up to you because if it is a terrible worry to you, also I wanted to mention that lemon balm tea, this lady served lemon balm tea, and someone had given her a lemon balm plant. It isn't the same as lemon mint, but she had put some lemon balm leaves in a little strainer, and she had made this delightful lemon balm tea. It hardly had any color in it at all, but it was absolutely delicious. It was a light yellow and beautiful. So if you ever order any lemon balm tea bags, be careful, because they can taste terrible if you don't just be really light-handed with them. They're supposed to be the water will be almost pale. And so I had researched lemon balm before I had got there, and it's an important ingredient for lessening stress. And for the most part, stress is supposed to be quite good for us. It's quite useful. It keeps us alert and keeps us in a state of awareness about some things that we need to do. But too much of it without a break is not good for you. And it has been said that lemon balm tea, a cup of it, will help alleviate that so much. So you have to have breaks from constant worry, constant stress, constant stiffness, and not being able to relax. And this lemon balm tea really does it. So I'll read to you from 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 10 and 11 and 12, because it comes from the Psalms, and I believe it's Psalms 34, 12 to 16, but it's been repeated in 1 Peter. And so after I read this, or after we each took a turn reading a section of it, and then everyone agreed that there in a capsule is the answer to something. And so this is especially important to the mothers and the grandmothers and the wives that are unable to sleep or suffering because someone has left the way of life and godliness. So let's read this. Whoever desires to love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. So, if people in your life are feeling that there's some kind of conflict going on in their lives, and they're having a mental battle, because they're wanting to do something that is not right, and the people that love them are imploring them not to be that way, they start to feel this turmoil. And so this is such a wonderful scripture. Who wouldn't want to love life and see good days? And here's the answer. Whoever desires to love life and see good days. Isn't that what we want in the home? To be happy, to love life, and see good days. Isn't that what we want here? That's why we keep the televisions out of here. And see good days. Here's the formula. Let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. We discuss that at great length. Many times people who are in a turmoil spiritually and who are worrying their families and grieving their loved ones have turned away from good and start going toward things that are false, things that are deceitful, and start believing the deceit. So it says, turn away from it and seek peace and pursue it. Isn't that lovely? So in order to seek peace and pursue it, we all have to figure out how to do that. Now for me, one way to seek peace is to try to get a little organized so that my mind is not in a whirl. And for me, it is the housekeeping, but it's also to pray to God that he'd help us to be good and kind and a great example. And also, when you do get people around you, because I like to discuss people here, when you do get people around you who are just determined to argue about everything, learn to keep silent like Christ did. Just learn to keep silent, and you can develop a little a saying of your own, like and just leave it at that, and learn to walk away from it. without being rude. I know some people probably get more angry, but I wanted to read to you out of Wives and Daughters. So those of you who have children who love this story, I'm going to read a chapter about the home life of Mr. Gibson and Molly and their neighbors. And but I want to start it right now, and hopefully this will get you through a few things that you have to do, or if your children are alongside you working in the home, this might be very helpful. I loved Elizabeth Gaskell because she intended for her stories to have happy endings, and I noticed in reading them that some of the characters which I tended to, I didn't like them at all, towards the end they had learned and they had grown and were maybe not so willing to jump to conclusions, or not so willing to do things for other people that got them in trouble. And we noticed last time, one of the chapters that I read from Wives and Daughters, Molly had gotten herself in trouble by slipping a note to Mr. Preston from Cynthia to break it up with him. And so someone had seen her do that, and her reputation was really in the ground, and her father was grieved. And so there are such good lessons in here. So this is called Chapter 4, Mr. Gibson's Neighbors. Molly grew up among these quiet people in calm monotony of life, without any greater event than that which has been recorded, the being left behind at the Towers until she was nearly 17. She had been a visitor at the school, but had never gone again to the annual festival at the Great House. It was easy to find some excuse for keeping away, and the recollection of that day was not a pleasant one on the whole, although she often thought how much she should like to see the gardens again. Now, if you remember that first chapter that I read maybe last year, she was left at the Towers. She fell asleep, and she woke up to the party that was going on, and her father finally came to get her, and he asked her how she liked it at the Towers, and she said it was nice, but I hope I never have to go there again. Lady Agnes was married. There was only Lady Harriet remaining at home. Lord Hollingford, the eldest son, had lost his wife, and was a good deal more at the Towers, since he had become a widower. I suppose it was called the Towers because of the architecture of the residence that they lived in. He was a tall, ungainly man, considered to be as proud as his mother, the Countess, but, in fact, he was only shy and slow at making commonplace speeches. He did not know what to say to people whose daily habits and interests were not the same as his. He would have been very thankful for a handbook of small talk. Who else do we know had a handbook of small talk? Wasn't it the minister at on Pride and Prejudice that bragged that he had a small book where he had written down little niceties to say to people, and would have learned his sentences with good-humored diligence. He often envied the fluency of his father, who delighted in talking to everybody, and was perfectly unconscious of the incoherence of his conversation. But, owing to his constitutional reserve and shyness, Lord Hollingford was not a popular man, although his kindness of heart was very great, his simplicity of character extreme, and his scientific acquirements considered enough to entitle him to much reputation in the European Republic of learned men. It's going to be harvest time here soon, and I'm hearing a lot of big tractors and trucks going by. In this respect, Hollingford was proud of him, Hollingford being the town. The inhabitants knew that the great, grave, clumsy heir to his fealty was highly esteemed for his wisdom, and that he had made one or two discoveries, though in what direction they were not quite sure. But it was safe to point out to strangers visiting the little town that that's the Lord Hollingford, the famous Lord Hollingford. You must have heard of him. He's so scientific. If the strangers knew his name, they also knew his claim to fame. If they did not, 10 to 1, but they would appear as if they did, and so conceal not only their own ignorance, but that of their companions as to the exact nature of the sources of his reputation. He was left a widower with 2 or 3 boys. They were at public school, so that their companionship could make the house in which he had passed his married life but little of a home to them, and he consequently spent much of his time at the Towers, where his mother was proud of him and his father was fond, but ever so little afraid of him. His friends were always welcomed by Lord and Lady Cumnor. The former, indeed, was in the habit of welcoming everyone everywhere, but it was a proof of Lady Cumnor's real affection for her distinguished son, and she allowed him to ask what she called all sorts of people to the Towers. All sorts of people really meant those who were distinguished for science, without regard to rank, and must be confessed, without much regard to polished manners likewise. And so I'm just plowing through the wordiness of Elizabeth Gaskell's Wives and Daughters, and I thought you might enjoy listening to that part, and also have something smart that was said to the world by Jane Austen. And you must write down these things in your little scrapbook and your little notebook. Write down your own thoughts and your own things, and leave something tangible for your loved ones. She said, "We must think the best, hope the best, and do the best." So ladies, I hope that you got a few things done, even though this was half an hour, and I do hope to come more often, even in all this chaos around me. And I hope that your day is absolutely lovely. Make your list and follow it. See if you can put yourself to the test sometime and be your own teacher. Make a list and then obey the list, and see if you could even give yourself a prize. But make a list and then follow it. And if there are people around, or there are things that interrupt the list, all you have to do is, as soon as the interruption is over, go back to where you left off and just continue, and don't give up. Another thing, ladies, that I'd like to encourage you to do is get enough rest. And if you are just dragging around all day, that's no good. You need to rest, and to make sure that you can, if possible, to live without alarm clocks. They disturb the sleep. But if you go to bed early enough, you won't need an alarm clock, because you'll wake up at unearthly hours like I do. But your health will be good. And so take care of yourself while you live, and do your best to glorify God and be thankful for your life and for the body He gave you, and to treat others the way you would treat yourself. And that is a big test, to take care of yourself. And I think we as homemakers have probably thought over the years that it's too selfish, or it's too vain to take care of ourselves. But our mothers and grandmothers would go at least twice a day to the mirror and redo their hair, or straighten their clothes out or something, to make them feel better, to more presentable, and to make homemaking pleasant. And that is the most important thing. And whatever it takes to make your homemaking pleasant, do what you can. And remember the Bible of the woman who used the precious oil to wash the feet of Jesus, and he said she has done what she could. So use what you can, and make home living and your life at home and your day at home the most pleasant. Learn to pace yourself, and learn not to overdo it, but learn to pace yourself, because it's very easy to, around 3 or 4 o'clock, to start feeling there's something wrong, and I feel a little bit down, and I can't put my finger on it. That is where fatigue is coming near, and also the light is changing, and the atmosphere is changing, and the weather, everything is changing around that time, and we can't expect to feel as excited as we did in the morning but that is the time we start to wind down. So have some late afternoon things on your list that you are going to wind down and do, so that closer and closer towards retiring, we start winding down and doing more quiet, pleasant things, and being happy, taking away the stress of the day and saving, putting it away and saying to put it on your list again for another day if you haven't got it done. So I really appreciate you all, and it's just changed my life to be able to come here and talk to all 20 of you. I think there might be 25 by now. And have that to look forward to. I don't feel quite myself if I haven't talked to my girls, so I hope that you will do the best you can and start your little notebook. Get yourself, if all you get done is getting yourself dressed up, at least do that. That is something, and it's a good work because it makes others happy and cheerful too. So ladies, God bless you. Please remember to think about Christ all day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.